Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check today's video out and spend some time with me. And guys, today I want to have a conversation about getting lots of fish as far as catching lots of numbers or catching quality fish, and some things you can do depending upon what your preference is with that. Some people just like to get bit. Some people don't care about catching a lot of little ones. They just want to get some good ones. So I've got some tips and advice here that go beyond the obvious. I mean, the obvious would be throw little lures to catch little fish, throw big lures to catch big fish. That's a massive oversimplification. So we're going to get into that in today's episode here. Also, guys, just thank you very much for just everybody out there that's taking time to support Advanced Bass Fishing here, subscribing to the channel, using my links in the description of the video, guys. If you like the content here and there's one thing you want to do to give back for the content, just go into my description of every video and use and bookmark that Tackle Warehouse link for any time you purchase tackle. That's the best thing you guys can do if you like to give something back. And if you need to buy tackle anyway, it's a good way to accomplish both things there. So really appreciate that. Okay, one of the things about bass fishermen, it seems like people are divided on this. I've been around a lot of people that, man, they don't care anything about catching 12 or 14 inch fish. They just want to catch quality fish, and other guys just, they just want to get some bites and catch a lot of fish. So there's no judgment I'm placing on that. It's just the preference everybody has. But I want to give you guys some tips and advice on what you can do in order to generate, that type of bite from what you're looking for. Okay, first of all, let's talk about numbers of bass. And when you're talking about numbers of bass, you're generally talking about smaller fish, because if you're catching numbers of bass, most of the time that's pretty indicative to catching those fish between 1 to 2 pounds. Those are decent fish. They're keepers in most part of the country, and that's just sort of that time. That's sort of what is defined as far as the numbers game. Fish 2 pounds or less. So here's some things that you can do to really help with that. First of all, it's all about the time of the year. Certain times of the year, those type of fish are going to be in certain areas a little bit more than others. But for the most part, smaller bass out there, when you have smaller fish, they don't require the same things that quality fish do. So areas that have larger numbers of smaller bass may not necessarily be a good place to catch a quality fish in terms of the structure and the water depth available. If you're looking for places to catch numbers of bass, a lot of that has to do with getting on areas that don't have a lot of complex diversity types of structure. In other words, areas like rocky banks, points, clean type areas, things that are pretty much devoid of cover. A lot of times the numbers of bass will get on those areas, especially around points and rocky banks, depending upon the type of day it is. One of the things that will really help you catch numbers of fish on those type of areas is some type of situation where you have a little bit of wind coming in on it. So if you're looking to catch a lot of fish, like fishing main lake and secondary points, fishing rocky banks, bluff banks, transitional type areas, open water, hard structure areas. When I'm talking about hard structure, I'm talking about normally rocks or drop-offs or breaks. That's hard structure. Other types of structure would be more temporary structures like grass beds or lay down trees or docks or something like that. But hard structures, bluff banks, rocky banks, pea gravel banks, points, those are type of areas that hold larger numbers of smaller bass. In my opinion, there's two primary structures that hold lots of smaller bass to get your numbers. And the first one would be points, like we talked about. And the second would be some type of a steeper rocky bank. Now, those steeper rocky banks, it could be a riprap bank, it could be a bluffy bank, it could be a channel swing bluff, it could be a channel transition area. But large numbers of bass gravitate to those type of areas because, there's a lot of stuff there for them. I mean, there's a lot of crawdads, there's a lot of minnows. They can move back and forth to those areas like migration routes and highways, and it puts fish in larger numbers in those areas. Now, there's something to be said also for that smaller bait and smaller fish as far as catching numbers, but there's a couple different lures that will catch larger numbers of small fish. And probably the best one you can throw, this depends on the water clarity, obviously, but is some type of a smaller plastic worm, some type of a 4 or 5 inch plastic worm, either rigged, on a a drop shot rig, or a shaky head, or a Texas rig, or even putting it on like a split shot rig or a Carolina rig. Carolina rigging a little worm on points is a good way to catch them. Throwing a shaky head with a little worm on it on bluff banks or rocky banks, really good way to catch them, especially if you have water visibility of over 3 feet. Now, if you have water visibility dirty, you can still catch them on those same type of areas, but probably the two best lures when you have more stained water, like water visibility under 2 feet, is number one, some type of a small crankbait, like that Megabass Super Z2 or something about 1.25 inches long is going to be a really good way to catch numbers. And the second on that would be like a little 1/4 ounce lipless crankbait, like a little rattle trap. Guys, a little shad pattern 1/4 ounce rattle trap fished on a windy, rocky bank, great way to catch numbers of bass. But those are the three main guys: a shaky head, little tiny crankbait, and then some type of a lipless crankbait is going to get you a lot of ones. And it depends. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that's going to be different, but if I'm looking for numbers, that's the type of places that I'm looking at, especially if you have those type of days that are conducive for those fish to move up there, which are usually your cloudy, low light days. Another thing with that, those smaller bass, for the most part, like to live in a little bit shallower water. I can't tell you how many times, guys, that I've been fishing like in the summertime of the year in a lake that has the water visibility like I just talked about, and there'll be tons of bass like in 3 foot of water or less, and they're right up there mixed with the bluegills and the perch and the minnows up on the bank. Smaller bass like to live in shallow water for the most part. Okay, now if you want to focus on quality fish and you want to, and you don't mind, it doesn't bother you if you don't get many bites, but you just want to catch some quality fish. I'm not talking about big ones. I'm talking about just good quality fish. Fish of 3 pounds or better, which is an exceptional fish in most lakes. Some lakes that are really, really good, that may be like nothing to write home about. But for most parts, if you're catching 3 pounders, you're doing pretty dang good in most lakes across the country. So there's a big separation between what a 3 pounder or a 4 pound bass requires versus what a 12-inch bass requires. It's very, not rare, but bass that are bigger, like 3 and 4 pound bass, do not like to expose themselves like those smaller fish do. They don't like to just get on nothing looking banks and bare points and rocky banks and that type of stuff, unless you have a very specific window of conditions. The water temperature's got to be right, sunlight intensity's got to be right, time of day's got to be right, the water clarity's got to be right. It's not like, but a little bass, those factors, it's not that big of a deal to them, but the bigger bass are. So I'm not saying you can't catch quality fish on those same type of areas that you catch in little ones, but it's a lot more of a tighter frame of window. What you need to look for if you're wanting to consistently catch larger bass is that cover diversity that we talk about a lot. And that cover diversity are areas that have a lot of options for fish, a lot of options for fish to hide at. This could be whatever structure you have in the lake, as long as you got a good mix of it. It could be a bank that's got, say for example, you're looking way down this bank and you see 7 or 8 boat docks, then you go around another 50 yards down and there's a little bluff bank and a rock transition, and then maybe you go back into a cove and there's some lily pads back in the cove there, lots of lay down trees, just a diversity of cover. That diversity of cover is very appealing to larger fish, because most larger fish, they want to be able to ambush their prey from some type of cover, and they want some type of an immediate access to deeper water. Now we're talking about bass that traditionally live in medium to shallow depths. We're not talking about those open water roamer fish that are out there just following shad everywhere, traditional structure type fish. So that's what you have to concentrate on, is concentrate on thicker cover, heavier cover, and then your baits have got to be a little bit different too. Larger fish are going to react to larger baits. That's what we talked about right off the bat. It's not the primary thing, but that is a truth to it. You don't have to go to big baits in order to catch quality fish. Just upgrade your size a little bit. Instead of going to that 4 or 5 inch plastic worm, put a 7 or 8 inch plastic worm on a shaky head. Instead of using a little 1.25 inch crankbait, go to a 2 inch crankbait. Start incorporating lures out there that have larger profiles and more aggressive actions, like a larger square bill crankbait, swim baits, glide baits, spinner baits, chatter baits, things that require a little bit more of a commitment from bass. And if I can tell you a couple different lures that will consistently produce quality fish, one is a full-size jig, like my Blaukat Throwback jig I talk about, some big regular full-size jig. Some type of a creature bait will produce quality fish. A spinner bait is a great bait for quality fish. A chatter bait is a great bait for quality fish, and a topwater lure. Those are the baits that you're not swinging for the fence with those baits, because a lot of different size of fish will hit that. But if you put those in correlation with the areas I'm talking about, the mixed diversity of cover with that type of lure categories, you're going to catch some good ones too. And by all means, guys, another thing that will really help you catch bigger fish is being quiet in the boat. Try to keep your boat from rocking around. Don't talk a lot. Don't bang your trolling motor around. Don't make a lot of noise in the boat. That people do not give that enough credit as far as having an impact on those bigger fish. Because I'm telling you guys, a fish does not get big. Like a 3 or 4 pounder has to overcome a tremendous amount of obstacles to get that big. I mean, it's 1,000,001 to shot for a bass fry to reach 3 pounds. So these fish are genetically superior, and they're smarter than most fish, and they're very aware of noise. So anyway, I hope it helps you catch some bigger ones, guys, or lots of them, and we'll talk later.